Greetings to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Shex's YouTube channel. Today we're going to look at some software engineering concepts, and mostly we're going to look at project planning, project management. So we'll start with the question: what is it that we are referring to when we are saying project management? So project management is concerned with some activities involved in ensuring that the software is delivered on time, within the budget, and in accordance with the requirements of the organization. So what do you mean by this statement? We are just saying uh, you are trying to manage your time. You are trying to manage your budget in terms of financial budget and everything else that is involved in the budget. And you are also working towards or within the organizational domain. And the organization that we are talking about is the one that is developing and the one that is procuring the software. So you have to work within their uh, goals or vision or missions so that you don't conflict with organizational goals. So we are managing the resources, the time, the money, personnel, and anything else that we have that is involved in the software development process. And project management is needed because software development is always subject to budget and schedule constraints that are set by the organization developing the software. So what happens is this, you are trying to come up with a software. The software is needed by a client, but you as a developer or you as a software engineer, you are the ones who define the timelines because you know how long it takes you to develop something. You know how much is needed for you to develop something. So all those resources, you have to come up with a proper schedule. You have to come up with a proper timeline. And since you are the one who is coming up with the proper timeline or the schedule, you are the one who's going to execute it. So be realistic. Make sure you're realistic, and also don't force yourselves to accept some contracts that you cannot actually achieve or that you cannot meet. So make sure you come up with the schedule, you work within that schedule, you manage your resources, your time, your funds, you work within organizational domains. Right. So with this, we now get into the activities involved in uh, in managing resources. But before we talk about activities involved, um, in software management, the product that you are trying to come up with is not tangible. So it's intangible mostly. But for you, for engineers, you assemble hardware components, and assembly is tangible. You assemble physical and tangible objects. So you assembling those tangible objects. What you then write when you are doing software development or software project management, you will be writing something that is not touchable, intangible. Therefore, it becomes something that is with more of conceptual or theoretical. So you need to take care of the intangible thing. You manage it. You make sure that you have your deliverables outlined. The product is also uniquely flexible. When you develop a software for a certain client, maybe you may be requested to develop the same system or the same software for a different client. Therefore, um, the development timelines and activities may differ depending on the organizational goals, timelines, resources, and stuff and stuff. Software engineering is not recognized as an engineering discipline with the same status of mechanical, electrical, uh, civil engineering, and stuff and stuff. The software development process is not standardized. Many software projects are one-off or once-off projects. Once the project is developed, it's done. What's left maybe is just to follow the last stage, which is maintenance, or yes, maintenance of your product. Now the activities includes proposal writing. So normally we write proposals uh, to fund the new projects. We write proposals to get an understanding of what is needed or what needs to be done. We write proposals to actually identify the problem at hand, and there are many reasons why we write proposals. We then get into project planning and scheduling. You come up with your plan. We'll talk about several plans that you may come up with, and we'll talk about how to come up with a schedule later in this lecture. Then project costing and preparing bids. You get a tender, you prepare bids, you submit whatever that you submit, you get the tender, you start to do the job, all the costing is done by you, all the bids are prepared by you. Project monitoring and review. You have to monitor your project from scratch up until you get to maintenance level. You select human resources to work with. You evaluate your project, you evaluate your personnel, you evaluate your project progress, you evaluate everything that you do in project management. Do report writing, you present your stuff, you may present your proposal, you may present your requirements, you may present, and there are many ways of presenting stuff. If you are presenting something that has got many or much content, you may actually use a Word document or PDF. If you are presenting something that needs some descriptive or oral communication with the audience, you may use Microsoft PowerPoint. You may actually use some videos to present your stuff, pictorial stuff in presenting your stuff, attending lots and lots of meetings. Definitely you will do that if you are coming up with a software and trying to manage your activities or your project. Now let's talk about project staffing. By project staffing, we are talking about who is going to work on what. But before we talk about that, the activities that we talked about, they are not peculiar to software management. They may exist in other uh, engineering research areas. Many techniques of engineering project management are equally applicable to software project management. Technically, complex engineering systems tend to suffer from most of the same problems as software systems. Now, talking about project staffing, it may not be possible to appoint the ideal people to work on a project. Normally, this is a human resource challenge because human resource managers they just request for the CVs and try to apply the techniques they have learned about human resource management. But the technical ability is determined by those that know what needs to be done. Therefore, the HR will consult the software engineers in place. Who do you want what qualifications must we have, what experience are we requesting for this project, and stuff and stuff. So it's so difficult to actually get the exact person who can work on any specific project. Project budget may not allow for use of highly paid staff. Yes, experts, they are so expensive to pay, but they are needed in project management or project development. So how are you going to manage the project if you're having staff that is paid with low amounts, and those guys or those developers normally they are not the experts that are expected as mentioned on point number one. So project budget may not allow for use of highly paid staff. Therefore, you have to compromise and work with what you have, but that must not compromise the quality of your product. So you either apply staff development, you employ uh, your staff, the staff that is not at highest level in terms of expertise, and then what you do is you develop them, and then they become experts. You pay them as you afford. If they agree, then you still go on with your stuff. Those with appropriate skills or experience may not be available. Yes, definitely. Those that are good at what they do, they normally don't stay at one uh, position or at one organization. They are wanted all over. Therefore, either their time is not enough for them to stick on your project all alone. Two, they may not actually be available for your project from A to Z, from scratch to deployment or maintaining. And then managers have to work within these constraints, especially when there is an international shortage of skilled IT staff. That's why you observe that these days some international organizations they try to hire international employees to get the best of within the world, the best in the world. They try to employ the best in the world. And then managers have to work within these constraints, especially when that I think that's a repetition. And then we talk about project planning. Probably the most time-consuming project management activity is project planning. Project planning, it takes a lot of time because it covers every aspect that is involved in coming up with the software. So you have to make sure that your plan is so precise, is so explicit, is straight to the point, and so detailed in terms of deliverables, resource allocation, scheduling, everything. Continuous activity from initial concept to system delivery. Plans must be regularly revised as new information becomes available. And different types of sub-plans may be developed to support a main software project plan. So you will find that we have types of project sub-plans, and I'm going to talk about them. I will just list them here. We have quality plan. This one describes the quality procedures and standards that will be used in a project. And then we have a validation plan. The validation plan describes the approach, resources, and schedule used for system validation. So this one gives you the approach and the resources, time, money, and all the schedules that is required for you to validate your software product. And then configuration management plan. This one describes the configuration management procedures and structures to be used. Uh, this one is actually telling us how we're going to configure and what procedures are we going to follow within this project development. Maintenance plan. This one predicts the maintenance requirements of the system, maintenance cost and effort required. You know what needs to be changed in future. You predict what may change within your project so that you plan on how to keep yourself up to second or up to milliseconds so that in future your product is still valid for the customer you developed for. And then staff development plan, I've talked about this one. This one tells us how the skills and experience of the project team members will be developed. I've talked about this earlier. And then we talk about project plan document structure. So project plan, the output of project plan is a document. And the structure, it starts with an introduction, and this one sets the objectives, the aim, and the constraints, the scope, limitations, delimitations, significance of coming up with the software, benefits of having the software. It is highly introduced in this part of the document. Project organization, what parts, what components do you have within your project? How are they organized? Which part of the project is going to start, followed by which of the components are going to run at the same time, concurrently? Risk analysis, what risks are involved? Hardware and software resource requirements, functional requirements, system requirements or software requirements, user requirements related to hardware and software. Work breakdown, that's where you talk about coming up with visual or pictorial charts that can tell us which part is going to start, which part is going to follow the other. Project schedule, monitoring and reporting mechanisms. Then we talk about activity organization. Activities in a project should be associated with tangible outputs for management to judge the process. Normally, the management, they, if myself, I recommend that management must come from people who have been doing their work, the technical work before, and then they come promoted, they are promoted to management so that they understand the processes and activities involved in coming up with coming up with a software product. So activities in a project should be associated with tangible outputs. Tangible outputs includes, since the software product is not tangible, the tangible products includes the requirements document, uh, some reports, some presentations, and stuff. All those are the tangible uh, outputs that the management will make use of to judge progress of your system. Then we have milestones that are the unequivocal endpoints of process activities. Deliverables are project results delivered to customers. Yes, handbooks and stuff. They are also internal deliverables. The waterfall model allows for the straightforward definition of milestones. So they call it a deliverable oriented model. Deliverables are always milestones, but milestones are not necessarily deliverables. Right. Deliverables are always milestones. So the moment you deliver something, it means you have reached a certain stage. So you can proceed, you can actually tell to say, these guys have reached this stage. But now, milestones are not necessarily deliverables. Sometimes we can actually reach a milestone. That is something that is a prerequisite for another activity. But it may not be a deliverable. For instance, let's say we have to write a let me try to think about an engineering example. Right. Let's say you have a hardware component that you want to use in a bigger system. So that hardware needs a, a driver software, but you have to develop the driver software. Coming up with the driver software is just a milestone for you to achieve a certain module development completion. So that becomes a milestone, but not a delivery. Then milestones. For example, when you do feasibility study, you come up with a feasibility report. Requirements analysis, you come up with the requirements definition document. Prototype development, evaluation report. Design study, architectural design. That's where most of the hardware or engineering systems come into play. Requirement specification document. And then project scheduling. This one split projects into tasks and estimate time and resources required to complete each. Tasks should not be too small or too large. They should last on the order of weeks for projects lasting months. Right, so you may decide to say, I want to work with weeks or I want to work with months, depending on the size of your um, tasks. Then you organize as concurrent activities to make up more use of workforce, because some of the activities that you can do, some of the activities that you can do at the same time, you have to make sure that they run at the same time to minimize the delivery time, or to make sure that you are efficient in doing your in managing your time resource. Minimize task dependencies to avoid potential delays, because if one of the activity is depending on other activities, those other activities, if they delay, then it means they are delaying the other activity that depends on them. Therefore, you have to minimize task dependencies. Dependent on the project manager's intuition and experience. All right, yes. Project scheduling process, it starts with identify activities. You identify activity dependencies, estimate resources for activities. How long does this need? How much money does it need? How many programmers or how many people are needed to achieve this activity? And then allocate people to activities, create, and not only people, you also allocate other resources like time, money, and any other resource that needs to be allocated. You create project charts and activity charts and bar charts. Right, we also have scheduling problems. Estimating the difficulty of problems and the cost of developing solutions is hard. Estimating problems normally they just come like a thief. They just appear while you are doing your things and thinking that zvinhu zvakarongeka. Uchitoti zvinhu zvakarongeka, things are not rongekati. Or when you think things are in order, a problem or a challenge just appears and distracts everything that you'll be doing. It distracts progress. So you have to think critically and try to identify and predict problems. But this is so difficult. It is so difficult to estimate problems. And this leads to high cost. Progress is generally not proportional to the number of people working on a task. Yes, definitely. You may think that adding 1,000, let me just say 6 people on a certain task will allow the task to be completed sooner. That's not it. This is not hard labor. Hard labor, that's why we are saying we want to lift a 50, let me just say 500 kg stone, want to push it to a certain location from point A to point B. definitely they will need more people because this is labor, this is hard labor. But since our product is not tangible, it doesn't need the muscle, it needs the brain. So working smart may actually need less people. Right, progress is generally not proportional to the number of people working on a task. I think I've talked a lot about this. Adding people to your late project can make it later. Yes, if you think you are solving a problem by adding more people to a task, then you are actually wasting it. Then the unexpected always happens. You know that you have your expert. If you have a single expert working on something and none of other members they don't know anything, then if that person force gets sick, then what happens? It means progress is paused. So you have to make sure that at least two people know something, know about at least each task has got two people who know how to complete it. Always allow for different contingencies in planning. So that's one of the examples that I just gave you, but you have to think about other ways of uh, curbing unexpected issues that may pop up when you are doing something or when you are doing a project. And then we have graphical notations that are often used to illustrate project schedules. We have activity charts, we have got bar charts, and we've got uh, these known as the bar charts. They are also known as Gantt charts, and activity charts. They are also known as petty charts. And activity charts, they show task dependencies, duration, and critical path. And then we have the bar charts, which generally show resource, that is people, assignments, and calendar time. Risk management. Right, risk management, risk management, risk management. Let's now talk about risk management. Risk management is concerned with identifying risks and drawing up plans to minimize their effect on a project. A risk is a probability that some adverse circumstance will occur. The risks, the project risks, they affect schedule or resources. So product risks affect the quality or performance of the software being developed. Business risks affect the organization developing or the organization that you are developing for. So we've got many risks. We've got software risks. Software risks. Let me just talk about these software risks. We've got risk of staff turnover. Staff may just may start to get some other opportunities outside of your organization. They affect the project. Experienced staff will leave the project before it is finished, or your experts may leave before you finish the project. You have to predict this before it happens. Management may change, and this may affect the project. There will be a chance of organizational management with different priorities. If you are in police, the bosses may change. If you are not in police, your organizational management team may change. Software engineering managers may change. You may also face a risk where the hardware required, especially for engineers, the hardware required is not available. Hardware which is essential for the project will not be delivered on schedule. Requirements change. This one is serious. Requirements change. Mostly what happens is a client requests something, and after 6 months, you have been working on the requirements that they gave you. Then they discover that they gave you the wrong requirements. They come up with new requirements. So you need to predict this and have a plan when requirements change. There will be a larger number of changes to the requirements than anticipated. Specification delays. Projects, this one affects the project and the product. Specifications of essential interfaces are not available on schedule. All these are software risks. So there are many risks involved in software development, but I've just mentioned these ones. And then the risk management process. Risk identification, you have to identify the risk first. Identify the project, product, business risks. Then we have the risk analysis, assess the likelihood and consequences of these risks. Risk planning, draw up plans to avoid or minimize the effects of the risk. Risk monitoring, monitor the risks throughout the project. If you do that, you minimize the risks. It's so difficult to eliminate risks, but you try to minimize them. Risk identification. This one, on risk identification, you have to identify risks based on technology risks, people risks, organizational risks, requirements risks, estimation risks. So technological risks, that's where we gave an example of hardware being unavailable or incompatible hardware devices. People risks, you may lose experienced staff, changes in management. Organizational risks, change of goals, change of requirements. Estimation risks, you may actually fail to estimate some of the risks that may occur. And then we have risks and their types. We've got technology, people, we've talked about these ones. Technology, the database used in the system may not process as many transactions per second as expected. People, it is impossible to recruit staff with the skills required. The organization is restructured so that different management are responsible for the project, staff and staff. And then we talk about risk analysis, assess probability and seriousness of each risk. Probability may be very low, moderate, high, or very high. Risk effects might be catastrophic, serious, tolerable, or insignificant. So you have to plan for the risks. So in other words, we are saying consider each risk and develop a strategy to manage that risk. You are supposed to come up with avoidance strategies. The probability that the risk will arise is reduced. Minimization strategies, you minimize the risk or the probability of experiencing or realizing the risk. The impact of the risk on the project or product is reduced. You need to come up with contingency plans. And then we talk about risk management strategies. We have organizational financial problems. We've got this can be solved. This risk can be solved by preparing a briefing document for senior management showing how the project is making a very important contribution to the goals of the business. There are many risks and we've talked about them. You are supposed to come up with a plan or a strategy on how to avoid, minimize, and have a contingency plan. Risk monitoring. Assess each identified risk regularly to decide whether or not it is becoming less or more portable. Also assess whether the effects of the risk have changed. Each key risk should be discussed at management progress meetings. Right, thank you very much. That's it for this lecture. Thank you very much for attending. Please be blessed by the Almighty God. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.